Hey, y'all, and welcome back. Welcome if you're new. I'm Tiffany, and this is our small town life, and I am so happy to have you here with me today. Today's video is going to be one that's packed full of all kinds of homemaker things. I decided to set the camera up and just let you be there with me throughout my whole day. And y'all, it was a full, busy day, so this is going to be a little bit longer of a video, and it's going to be full of a lot of homemaker encouragement, motivation, inspiration, however you want to say it. I had a lot of things to get done today, and I'm taking you along with me. The first thing that I'm doing is working on getting some sourdough rolls going. That's a whole day process, off and on, stretching and folding and letting it rise and do its thing. So I need to go ahead and get those going. I will leave a link to the recipe that I'm using down in the description box. A lot of what I have going on today, a lot of the things that I'm doing will be in the kitchen. I feel like I spend a good bit of time in the kitchen on a day-to-day basis. The kitchen really is the heart of the home, and as a homemaker, I spend a lot of time in here. So we're going to be doing a lot of things in the kitchen today, from making those sourdough rolls to canning up some applesauce and some muscadine jelly to water glassing some eggs, a lot of cleaning. We'll get to go out and give the chickens a treat. So come hang out with me for a little while. Would it be a homemaking video from Tiffany if I didn't share my thoughts and some encouragement on being a homemaker and the duties that we have as a homemaker? Let me share with you. So lately, I have been thinking about how people say that they should have been born a long time ago, that they were born in the wrong time, that they should have been born 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And I get it, because I've thought that myself about how I would have loved to live in that simpler time. Not saying that it was easy, but a simpler time, a time where family and community was very important, a time where they were growing their own food and cooking on the wood burning stove, a time with less distractions. Again, not saying that it was easy, but it was a simpler way of living, and that really appeals to my heart. And so I think about that and I think, oh, I would have loved to live back then. Here's the thing though, y'all. We were born for such a time as this. God is never early, God is never late. He put us here right now to serve a purpose and to live a life that glorifies Him. I'm here right now to carry on these traditions. I'm here right now to take care of and love my family. I'm here right now to share Jesus with this world. So, as much as I find those ways of old appealing, maybe it's not because I should have been born then, but because I need to carry on those traditions right now. Y'all, I ain't joking. I am so serious when I say I would go live in a cabin in the middle of the woods with no electricity, no running water, just a well and my garden and a wood burning stove and some kerosene lamps. Like, I would go do it right now. Justin, not so much. Some of these modern conveniences sure are helpful, right? That running water coming out of that sink sure is nice. But I'm telling y'all, I'd go do it right now if my family was on board. In all seriousness, though, I can embrace a lot of those traditions and carry them on, like the growing food and preserving food. Hey, look at me, shutting up that modern convenience of a dishwasher and running it. But I can carry on a lot of those traditions, like growing our own food, preserving our own food, sewing, and being in the kitchen and teaching my children. And I can carry on those things. I can do my part. I feel like God has laid those things and put a desire for those things on my heart so that I can carry them on. I can share them with my children and with other people. I can share them here with you. And this is not me saying that the things that we have today are bad, that moving forward is bad. That's not what I'm saying. And hey, look at those beautiful pickled eggs. My mama sent those over to us and I had to show them to you because they were gorgeous. But I'm not saying that those things are bad. I'm just saying that we need to make sure that we're maintaining focus, that we're not getting too distracted as we live in a world full of distractions. I'm going to start working on these apples. We got these on our recent little field trip to the apple orchard, and I got this big old bag of apples, this peck of apples, with the intentions of making some applesauce. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to start by rinsing them in a little vinegar water. These don't have any wax or anything like that on them. If you wanted to buy you some apples from the store, they're going to be coated in wax. You may want to soak them a little bit longer in the vinegar, give them a good scrub, but you can absolutely make this with store-bought apples. These came from the apple orchard, and they are beautiful and they are delicious. I'm going to make this batch of applesauce, and we'll be going back and getting some more as they continue to have some different varieties of apples available. So I'm just giving these a good rinse and good soak in this vinegar water, and then I'm going to start cutting them up and putting them in my pots. Now, I've done this a couple of different ways. You can peel them and core them and go ahead and put them in your pots that way. And then once it's cooked, all you got to do is hit it with an immersion blender or just a potato masher. But on this particular day, and the way I do it sometimes is I'm going to cut these apples, I'm going to quarter them, peel, core, stems, seeds, and all, and they're going in the pot. And then I'm going to cook them down and run them through a food mill when it's done. Both ways work great. In my opinion, it just depends on, do I have more time up front to peel them and core them, or do I want to spend a little extra time running them through the food mill at the end? Neither takes very long. And on this particular day, I need to go ahead and get to work on some other things. A full day in the kitchen, and so I just quartered these, put them in my pot. Y'all, I really probably need to invest in a stock pot, in a big stock pot. I don't have one. So I put these into smaller pots, let them start cooking down that way, and then once they cook down, I moved them and condensed them into one pot so I could work with them. This is one of those times, though, where a nice big stock pot sure would be handy. If you come across an apple that has a bad spot in it, y'all just cut the bad spot out, and the rest of the apple is still good. The little spot here that I'm going to cut out will go to the chickens. The rest of the apple is still perfectly good. Y'all, even if a whole side of an apple is bad, cut it off. The other side is probably still good. Don't throw out a whole apple for one or two little bad spots now. You might could even get you a good deal at an orchard on some apples that had some bad spots in them that you could just cut out and use the rest of the good apple. Or maybe you grow your own apples and you find that sometimes you have bad spots. Just cut them out and the rest of the apple is still good. I'm going to go ahead and add about a cup of water to each of these pots, just so that there's a little bit of moisture in the bottom so they don't scorch. As they cook, they'll release a lot of liquid themselves pretty quickly, but you want just a little bit of water in the bottom as they get started. I'm going to put them on the stove, put them on about medium to medium high heat, let them get good and hot. After a little while, I cut them down even lower than that and just let them cook until they're nice and soft. While those are going, I'm going to start sorting out these muscadines. I did a video recently, and I'll link it for you, where Mama came over and we made some muscadine jelly together. But y'all, there were plenty of muscadines left. These came from Pawpaw's house. He picked all of these, and he put all that effort into picking these. I'm going to make sure every single one of these goes to use. Now, we did have a few that had over ripened, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm just sorting those out. I had probably like 2 cups worth that had over ripened. I pulled all those out, set all the good ones to the side, gave them a good wash, and made another batch of jelly. So speaking of Pawpaw, while I'm sorting these, let's talk. Speaking of Pawpaw, y'all, he is about to be celebrating his 90th birthday. Isn't that amazing? And we're going to be doing a little party thing for him. Mama's been working on planning that. Maybe I'll vlog that so that y'all can be a part of that too. But how wonderful is that Pawpaw is going to be celebrating his 90th birthday, and he's still out picking buckets and buckets worth of muscadines. I'm so thankful for these, y'all. They have made the most delicious jelly. I'm not going to show the whole process today of me making the jelly. I did make a whole nother batch today, but since I do already have that video on it, I'll link that for you and you can go and watch it. I won't go through the whole process again today. And y'all, even if you have no desire to live an old-fashioned lifestyle, to like go with modern conveniences, that's okay. God has created us unique, and that's part of the beauty in being human, is that we have our own desires and our own ways. And as long as we're seeking out what God has intended for us, whatever path you take is wonderful. Again, as long as you're seeking out what God has intended for you. And we are all equipped with what it takes to take care of our family and to take care of our homes. I've also spent some time this week thinking about Proverbs 14:1, where it says, "The wise woman builds her house, and the foolish woman tears hers down with her own hands." And as I've thought about that, it's really kind of stirred some emotion in me and had me thinking about some of the things I do and the way I approach certain things. God has placed a lot of power and responsibility in our hands as the woman of our household. And the way we choose to approach those responsibilities and what we choose to do with that power greatly impacts our family and our home. We can choose to fill our homes with love and patience and service, or we can choose to fill our homes with negativity and grouchiness and bad attitudes. It's up to us. We set that tone, and the way that we go about our duties as a homemaker, it's going to impact all of that. You can either have that snowball effect with good things or with bad things. You know how that goes. It's one thing that builds onto another, that builds onto another, and the direction that it goes is up to you. I think this world is really taking the wrong approach to feminism, pushing it in the wrong direction, when in reality, God has placed a lot of power and responsibility into being the woman of the home, being the woman of the household. I think the world's taking it and running with it in the opposite direction, trying to quote unquote give women power when in fact they're taking it away. I want to be the one to encourage you and to let you know that if you find beauty and importance in taking care of your home and in taking care of your family, being a wife, being a mother, that is more than enough. It is a calling from the Lord. It is a duty and a job and a responsibility that He has placed on our lives. It is important. It's the most important work you will ever do. No matter what else comes and goes, jobs, careers, life happenings, your work as the woman of your household, as a wife, as a mama, as a woman taking care of her home, that's the most important work you'll ever do. This is work that you're doing for the Lord, and that is why He said that the woman of the house can either build her home up or she can tear it down with her own hands. That's given me a lot to think about this week. I am not perfect, and sometimes I let my bad attitude roll over into all kinds of aspects of our home. I approach things with the wrong kind of attitude. I don't come at them with service and love. I try to do my best, but y'all, I'm not perfect. And that verse has really, really stuck with me this week, and how important and how much power and responsibility we have as the woman of our household. Y'all, I'm taking some of those muscadines, those overripe muscadines, and pieces of apples out to the chickens. We had to stop by and check on the baby chicks. I feel like a mama hen. They have started going outside some during the day. We still have the brooder in there with them because, it is a little bit cooler. But they are loving being out in the sunshine and on the grass. But I have to go check on them. I was having to run these little babies. We had some escapees, and I had to run them back in with their mama. They're doing really good. But yeah, I had to run them back in. Y'all, we've got some volunteer plants coming up, some tomatoes, even a watermelon or two. Now they're not going to be able to do much before frost gets them, but I'm leaving them. I'm leaving them for now. They look beautiful. Isn't that how it works? Sometimes those plants that we didn't do anything to, that God just put the seed there and did his own thing, sometimes they do the best. It's like when they know you're not trying, they do better. Took a little peek around the garden, went ahead and pulled a radish to have as a little garden snack. And then we'll head back in the house and keep working in the kitchen. I've been doing some stretch and folds on my sourdough rolls. I got a couple more of those to do before I can roll out my actual rolls and get them going for their last rise. My apples have cooked down and I'm going to start running them through this food mill. Again, right now all I have are apples and a little bit of water. That's all I've got. And you can do just that to make your applesauce. If I had peeled these and cored them in the beginning, all I would be doing now is hitting them with an immersion blender or even just a potato masher. And then, it would be applesauce. But because I do still have the skins and seeds and things in mine, I'm going to run it through this food mill. Again, it doesn't take long, about 10 to 15 minutes. So either way, you're spending about the same amount of time. It just depends on, do you have the time up at the front or here at the end? So I'm running this through the food mill, and it does make a beautifully textured applesauce. And once I get that done, I'm going to add just a couple more ingredients to mine. Again, you don't have to, but I just find that that's how we really enjoy ours. And I'll show you what those things are that I add here in just a minute. Here's a little closer shot at what was going on. I was showing how you can turn it one direction and it pushes it through, and you turn backwards and it clears off the grate for you. So I'm just working on these apples, getting them going through this food mill. Again, it made a beautifully, beautifully textured sauce. I love to watch these clips of things sped up. Look at me go. Makes things look like it just went by in the blink of an eye. Y'all, I told y'all this was a full day in the kitchen. We are still working. We are still going. I still have plenty to share with you. If you're still here hanging out with me, thank you. I appreciate it. I think this is the last stretch and fold that I do on this dough before I go ahead and roll it into my rolls, the shape of my rolls, here in just a minute. And you can see how the texture of this has changed throughout the day as we've done these stretch and folds. Back to the applesauce. It's ready for me to add in those last few ingredients. I'm going to put in 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. I'm also going to put in a 1/4 cup of sugar, and you'll see all this here in just a minute. A 1/4 cup of sugar and about a teaspoon of cinnamon. You do not have to put any of those things in, but I feel like the lemon juice really adds a brightness to it, and that little extra sugar brings out the sweetness and cuts a little bit of the tartness, especially if you're using a tart apple. And we like cinnamon applesauce, so I put in a little bit of cinnamon. It's also a good idea to taste it and see what you think it needs as far as the amount of sugar. So you're going to see me doing that here in just a second. I'm going to give this a good stir, and then I'm going to take a taste test. And y'all, it was so good, especially when it's so fresh and warm. It's delicious. We go through a lot of applesauce. I got little ones. I got babies. Applesauce is a great food for them, so we use it for that. But we also just use it as a side for dinner or a little sweet treat after dinner. And so we go through a pretty good bit of applesauce around here. I'm going to can 6 pints of this, save the rest for us to eat on. But y'all, I'm going to have to make a couple batches of these so that we have plenty of applesauce in our pantry. I like to get the apples when I can get them from this local orchard, and they're nice and fresh and delicious. And so I'll make us a pretty good bit of applesauce, and I'll do that over the next few weeks. Fletcher saw me eating some of it, and he wanted some too. He was a little uncertain about it being warm still, but he loved it. Now I'm going to work on canning this. I'm going to be water bath canning it, and I do have a video that goes over some of the more finer details of water bath canning, and I'll make sure that that's in the description box for you. I even have a whole video from last year dedicated to making applesauce, and if I remember, I will link it as well. Sometimes I go through and I'm like, I'll link this and I'll link this, and then I get to the end and I'm like, oh goodness, what all did I say I would link? But I'm going to water bath can this, so I'm just starting by putting my applesauce into my jars. I'm using pints, and then I'm going to put it in my water bath canner, bring it to a boil, and process it for 15 minutes for these pints. If you did quarts, I would do it for 20 minutes. Like I mentioned earlier, I've already done a video on muscadine jelly. It was actually just a couple days ago when Mama came over and we took care of that. So not showing that whole process, but it was going too. I had the applesauce in the canner, my muscadines cooking down for juice for my jelly, and now it was time to get those rolls going for their last rise. I'm going to cut these into 12 rolls, and you could get out a scale and be real specific about making sure they were all the same size. But I think there's beauty in just being kind of homemade, rustic, not real specific or particular. Just kind of rough cutting them as long as they're close to the same size so they cook evenly. Y'all, it's just a good homemade sourdough roll for my family. They don't have to be perfect to be delicious and to be a special addition to our dinner. So I cut these up. I started by cutting the whole dough into half and then each half into 6. And I'm putting those in my baking dish for their final rise so that we can have them with our dinner. Speaking of what we're having to eat on this particular night, I had originally planned to do spaghetti, and then the more I got to thinking about it, Justin said something about we've had this cooler weather and you've not made any soup. And I was like, oh, you know what sounds really good is vegetable beef soup. So vegetable soup with some ground beef added to it. And I love making this, especially this time of year when we've been working hard to preserve all these things from the garden, to be able to pull out some of our own green beans and okra and corn and potatoes and tomatoes and make this beautiful pot of soup. You're going to get to see it here in just a minute. This beautiful pot of soup that has so much of our heart and our time and our effort put into it. It's very rewarding. Here I am bringing in my jars for my jelly. I went ahead and canned this in the pints instead of in jelly jars this time. And the timer is going off on my applesauce, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the stove top off, crack that lid, let it sit for about 5 more minutes before I take those out. And I will magically be done with the jelly in just a minute. Oh, first I had to do some more dishes, y'all. That's kind of the thing. I work in kitchen. There's a lot of messes. And so throughout the day, I was trying to stay on top of cleaning up my messes and keeping the dishes and things done as I go, so that at the end, it's not just overwhelming with feeling like there's so much still to do. You've done and you've worked and you've got all this stuff taken care of, and you're a little tired, but then you still see this big pile of dishes and a mess on the floor, a mess on the counter that you got to take care of. That is overwhelming for me. It's a lot easier for me just to take care of those things as I go. So it was time to do some more dishes. And then after that, I'm going to take my applesauce out of my canner so that I can put my jelly into the canner, and then magically I will be finished with the jelly and washing up dishes yet again. I like to make sure I get those pans and things that had jelly in them cleaned up as soon as possible, because that stuff gets sticky and gets sticky fast. So I like to try to get those cleaned up as soon as I can. I'm going to work on getting that sink cleared out yet again and some things wiped off on the counter. And oh, before we start supper, I was over here done talking about what we were going to have to eat for dinner. You're also going to get to see me water glass some eggs. So stay tuned. We'll get to that in just a second. We're going to water glass some eggs so that during these cooler months with shorter days and less sunlight, when the chickens slow down on their laying, we'll still have plenty of eggs to use. Now, last year, our chickens did not stop laying completely, at least some of them. Some of the breeds did and some didn't. So we were still getting some eggs, but not near as much as we get in spring and summer and early fall. So I'm going to make sure that I'm putting these eggs aside so that when production slows down in the winter, we still have eggs to use, and I'm getting my first gallon of water glassed eggs going. Now for this, you're using 1 quart of water. For every 1 quart of water is 1 ounce of pickling lime. And so that's what I'm measuring out. I have to do 2 quarts of this for what I'm putting in today. And then as I continue to add eggs to it, I'll continue to add more of this lime and water mixture. But I'm getting that first quart going right now, and I have some clean, unwashed eggs. So they're clean in the fact that they don't have any mud or manure or anything like that on them, but they've not been washed and they still have the bloom on them. And these are eggs from the last just day or two. You want them to be nice and fresh. So I've got my quart of water. I'm going to put that lime in and mix it up. I'm going to pour it over into the gallon jar, and I'm going to start laying my eggs in there nice and gently. And you'll see I didn't have enough of the water mixture to completely cover the eggs, so I made another quart, same measurements, quart of water, ounce of lime, and I'll pour that over those eggs. I'll continue adding to this, and if I've got eggs that are sticking up out of this lime water mixture, I'll just make some more to pour over the top. Let me go ahead and tell you too, you're going to see me sticking my hands down in this. Now, there's warnings on the pickling lime that it can dry out or burn your hands. I was okay. It, didn't bother me. I didn't have my hand in it very much, just sitting the eggs over in it. And right after I washed my hands off. Some people say it does dry their hands out. So you could wear a glove if you wanted to. I'm just showing you how I'm doing it. So I'm gently laying those eggs down in there, being very careful not to break them because these are raw eggs. I'm going to keep layering those in. Now, like I said, we're doing this so that we have eggs during the winter and into early spring before the chickens really pick up laying again. You can keep these stored in this lime water mixture for 18 months. Some people even say 2 years. I don't think these will go that long for us. And they stay good. They stay where you can pull them out and use them. Sometimes the texture of the inside changes. It gets a little looser, a little more runny. So you may not want to use them for, like, say, fried eggs. But this is a great way and a traditional way of storing eggs. You can see here where some of these are sticking out of that water mixture, so I'm going to make some more to pour over the top. You may also notice how some of that pickling lime had settled in the water. That's fine. Don't try to shake it. Don't try to stir it. That's perfectly fine. And I'm using the Mrs. Wages pickling lime. That's something that's usually readily available and something that's good to use for this process. You're also going to see that I'm using a piece of wax paper between the jar and my lid. I've heard that this can help protect your lid, especially if you're using a metal one, which I'm using the plastic. So I'm going to try it with this piece of wax paper here. We'll see if it ends up staying there or coming off, but for now I'm putting it on. And I made sure I had a nice sturdy place in my pantry, a shelf that was nice and sturdy because this does get heavy to sit my eggs on. Y'all look at that sourdough that we fed earlier. It is already nice and bubbly, so I could make another loaf for an overnight ferment for the refrigerator. And there's my jelly and my applesauce. Again, I did the jelly in pints this time. It is so good, y'all. It is so good. There's some corn that we sat out to just start thawing a little bit so that I could cut it off the cob to go into our vegetable soup. My kitchen's nice and clean. My sink is empty. And now I'm going to make a one-pot meal for dinner so that we have easy cleanup. Again, putting in some of our okra and our green beans, our corn and our potatoes, our tomatoes. Such a rewarding dinner to have. And it's so good. I love me a good vegetable soup.
Hey, okra. Okra.
Our rolls were really yummy too. We even took some of that muscadine jelly and put on our rolls. Oh, that stuff is so good. It reminds me a lot of grape, but just a little more tangy. And to round out the day, to finish her all off, I left the kitchen to vacuum. I've been borrowing my mama's rainbow vacuum about once a month. I use my regular vacuum in between, but y'all, I'm telling you, this thing right here is like magic. It picks up so much, even though I've been regularly vacuuming. I'll get it out in a minute. Vacuuming my carpet. This thing right here it does wonders, y'all. So I've been borrowing it about once a month and going over my carpets. I ain't even going to show y'all what it picks up. It's a little embarrassing. I'm telling you, I vacuum my carpet. This thing right here, though, is just, it's magic. I didn't notice until I was editing this that Wyatt was like mesmerized. He was just sitting there watching for a long time. Then he goes to playing with his toys. But I vacuumed the living room area and then some of the rooms, the bedrooms that had carpet in them. I went ahead and gave them a good vacuuming and then set it up to run as an air purifier for a little while. Y'all, if you've made it this far, y'all are champs. Y'all are family, right? I'm so glad that y'all hung out with me today. Let me know if you enjoy these longer videos. Maybe we'll do those from time to time. I love you. I appreciate you. I mean that with all my heart. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, y'all.